We have new details on a plan to build a second interstate through southern Arizona. Pima County has updated its recommendations for the project to build Interstate 11. The highway would connect Mexico to Canada, but one of the potential routes would take it through Avra Valley. And people living there and wildlife conservationists say that could be a big problem. 13 News reporter Kayla Butter joins us live from Avra Valley. Kayla, what are county officials saying in their recommendation?
Well, Valerie, they're basically saying that running a highway through this area, an interstate for that matter, could have huge environmental impacts, even more than what is realized by current available data, and that the Federal Highway Administration should heavily consider that when doing their updated environmental impact study.
Horses, all that farming community, it's rodeo, it's just what the culture is out here, and it's really just dwindling away.
Nearly 2 decades ago, the proposed Interstate 11, which could run through Avra Valley, concerned residents, and those concerns haven't gone away. Colton Wilhoit's family has lived in Avra Valley for decades. His grandfather built his own home, and Wilhoit is concerned that a new interstate could overly develop the small town he loves.
Then you're going to have big companies like McDonald's and all them build stuff out here, and that's going to take business away from the family businesses that thrive on the small communities out here.
The Federal Highway Administration's Interstate 11 project would connect Mexico to Canada and run 280 miles through Arizona. It has 2 routes that would pass through Pima County, the west option that runs through Avra Valley and the east option, which runs parallel to I-10. In 2021, the FAH conducted an environmental impact statement on the 2 routes, but following concerns from Avra Valley residents and environmental concerns from Pima County officials and wildlife conservationists, a 2025 court ruling required the administration to reevaluate their environmental impact statement, as their first one did not examine at the whole picture.
They're comparing an area that's very developed to an area that is not developed at all. Using existing data, there's much more data available for the developed area.
Chris Gade, the director for Pima County's Conservation Lands and Resources Department, says because of that, the county in their update is urging the FAH to consider that in their reevaluation.
If you just counted the number of known impacts on one versus the other, the undeveloped area would end up looking like there would be fewer impacts. But we don't actually know that.
The west option, which is the one Gade says is undeveloped, would run through the Sonoran Desert, Tucson Mountain Park, and Saguaro National Park.
That is one of the most pristine areas left in the county. It's very important for wildlife connectivity. It's very important for our drinking water.
Kate Houghton, the co-executive director of the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection, says an interstate running through the area could restrict the movement of animals.
We're looking at a risk of total ecological collapse, frankly, in the Tucson Mountains.
Gade told me that the county still has the same stance that they had over a decade ago, that they're against an interstate coming through this area. And Gade told me that land conservation information from the county will be used in the FHA's updated reevaluation. And once that's complete, public comment will be open, most likely later this fall. Reporting live from Avra Valley, Kayla Butter, 13 News.